Seven Jacobs. I'm a social entrepreneur, a podcast host, speaker, and lover of all things love, support, and mental health. And I'm here. Catch me this week on The Jesse T Show.
Seven Jacobs, welcome to the show, brother.
Thanks so much for having me, man. I am excited for today's convo.
Same, man. We had a great initial introduction, and there were so many things that you experienced in such a short amount of time on this earth. But you've really seen a lot of things that I think that are going to really help a lot of people. And the topics we're going to discuss today are powerful. So I just want the world to know a little bit about you and who you are. Share a little bit of context on what brought you to this moment.
Sure. So I think it's one of the strange things for me is I sometimes struggle to decide how I want to introduce myself, because if you ask me, who are you? I've got a couple different ways of answering that question. In a lot of ways, I feel like I'm still a scared little boy, and that scared little boy, and we'll get a lot into that and what brought me to where I am now. But a scared little boy is essentially what I was for the vast majority of my life, even when I became an adult and I wasn't a little boy physically anymore. Mentally, that was still a little bit, I say a little bit, for a long time, a lot of who I was. And now I'm in a position where I believe who you are should be much more expansive than that, much more future focused than that, as opposed to focus on your past self and past experiences. So I'm a bit of a weird intersection where I kind of believe I'm both of those things. To some extent, but I'm finally living a life which is much more joyous, much more free, lighter, and exciting, in all sorts of ways. So, um, everything from entrepreneurship to making a show of my own that I absolutely love, to just actually enjoying getting up every day, which for a lot of my life wasn't the case,
Yeah.
right? So to look back a little bit on what that was and all that story was. Um, I don't want to say that my story was unique or weird, because everyone's got a really unique story in some way, right? Everyone's gone through something. And I think mine pushed me in a couple directions, which meant that the life that I'm living now is not the life I should have been living, if that makes any sense,
Oh yeah.
right? I was born in Los Angeles. At the moment, I live in London, in the UK. But I was born in Los Angeles, California, and more into a couple of, really chilled out hippie parents, who were fairly carefree. But at one point when I was at the age of two, my mother fell really, really ill to a brain tumor. Um, and eventually, a few years later, a second one would take her life. But in the immediate consequences of that, and the events that led from that initial event, my entire life essentially spun out of control. Um, Everything from financially to the way my father dealt with it emotionally. Um, and all the physical and mental emotional consequences that that had on me, um, which put me in this really dark hole in a way. When I started to eventually, I came out of adolescence and went into being a teenager and eventually into a young adult. um, all of this unprocessed stuff started to catch up to me. So when I say stuff, um, we went through legal battles because some family members didn't think my dad should have custody of me. We spent time being homeless and rough sleeping. Rough sleeping essentially means being on the streets. So sometimes we were in hotels or on friends' couches, but sometimes we didn't have anywhere to go. And there's a very specific story I sometimes tell where we had to essentially squat in an apartment that we used to live in. We were kicked out because we couldn't afford the rent anymore, but actually it was going to be demolished in a few months, so it was actually still empty and we had the key.
Wow.
um so we essentially had to go in there, go into my old closet. The one bedroom in the flat had a closet with some carpeting on the floor, and that was the would have been the warmest place in the house. So that's where we laid down with our bags and as pillows and our jackets as blankets. It was just me and my dad kind of dealing with this. We didn't really have any other family there. Eventually, we had some support and reliance on the rest of my mom's side of the family. My mom is from LA, but my dad's side of the family is from here. Um, so that became eventually that became the escape. But in those moments, it was very much just us. And as an 8-year old, I don't think I knew how to process that. Right. I remember the next day getting up at school, getting up the class, a third grader. I went up to get a tissue or something. So I was standing up and looking over the whole class. And I remember thinking, I remember very, very clearly just thinking, no one here has any idea what I went through last night, because my school was in a pretty nice area, so none of the kids there would have experienced anything even remotely like that.
Right.
Um, and I mean, what a thing for an 8-year-old to think, right? Jesus, man. So that I didn't really deep that until I was older, because that was just that was just what life was for me, right? Eventually, we moved to the UK to be with family, and things were physically more stable. But then all those things I experienced, and there's going to be lots more within that I either have glossed over or don't even remember, that my brain blocked out for whatever reason. But when all that's finally started to catch up to me, when I got old enough to process it, I think it just hit me all at once and I couldn't process it.